Honourable Shane Jones.
Tēnā tātou katoa I roto I tō tātou whare I tēnei ata, me ngā mahi I oti I roto I ngā rangi pahure ake nei, te whakatūturutanga o te nohonga tahitanga, o te hunga takatāpui, me te tangihanga me ngā karakia I whakaritea mō Baroness Thatcher I tērā pito o te ao. Engari, kātie nei kōrero mō ngā baronesses o Rāwahi, me huri atu ki te kōrero ki te tangata whenua o Aotearoa. Nā reira, e oku tuakana, e oku mātua, tēnā koutou katoa, ko taumai ki te upoko o te ika, ki te mātakitaki I a mātou ngā kanohi o te ao toranga pū, e tūkotahi ana, kia whakatūturungi ai tēnei pire, e whiwhi pānga ai ngā whānau o roto Ngati Whatua ki te Kaipara, ki ngā taonga tukuiho mai o tātou huenga I tērā pito o te taitokerau. Nā reira tēnā koutou katoa. Sir, I rise to support the passage of this bill along with my colleagues. It has become the custom that all of the speakers, with the exception of a few irritating dissenters from time to time, support pieces of legislation promoted by the government to address our historic treaty grievances. Sir, Ngati Whatua represent an interesting case as to how the treaty grievances in this part of Māoridom have been dealt with. If I can just cast my thoughts back briefly to a former stalwart of the Māori Battalion, senior member in his day of the National Party and chief of Tai Tokero, Eruera Patuawa Nathan, otherwise known as Ned Nathan. Sir, he took a lead in the Te Roroa portion of the Ngati Whatua estate. A number of us felt, sir, that it would have been better, in all honesty, for Ngati Whatua not to have disaggregated. But I quickly learned to my cost as the chair of the Fisheries Commission, those matters are best left to iwi. And if the descendants of an iwi find that it wasn't the best thing to do, then they can sort that out with their mātuas and their fires, not the occasional Dalmatian Maori politician. So that was the first, sir, attempt, and of course that attempt was marred by the antics of Alan Titford and his neighbour Mr Harrison, who in the areas of Whāngai Ariki and Manuwhetai, they lodged a host of very destructive acts against a small group of Ngati Whatua, all of whom have gone now. Rori Lavi Te Rore, Laiha Pāniora and Matua Ned Nathan and a host of others. Then, sir, we turned our attention to what's commonly known as Bastion Point or Orake, and that was a portion. And then, sir, we also prior to a number of us coming into politics, watched the Te Uri o Hau settlement. And now, sir, we come and today support the descendants of Paura Tuhaere and a variety of other tupuna around this area of the Kaipara. So I think a couple of things need to be pointed out. That there are a range of assets tied up in this settlement, but there are also first rights of refusal. And I have to single out the Minister and congratulate him and his team for getting together the multiple interests that comprise the Tāmaki Makaurau Māori ancestral community. I think they're the iwi collective, because it has not been easy, and indeed the High Court, exasperated I'm sure, had to poke its nose into the affairs of Ngati. And one wonders, sir, whether or not once a group gets so small that it's almost a sort of an appellation problem, that they should not have joined forces with their Ngaitai further down the countryside. But that again, that's not for an MP to say. But things can be observed in the House without being sued for such observations. It might change when we get on the marae. But sir, the Minister, and no doubt the Minister of Māori Affairs, shepherding forward these groups. And I only raise it in the context because this hapu, this group, sir, they have interests in the area around Whenuapai and Hobsonville. And a large block of Crown land formerly dedicated to a military purpose I believe it was in our time, came back into, through the Public Works Act, or words to that effect, came back into serving another Crown purpose called housing. Now recently, sir, I went to this development when I popped in to visit Maoridom's most famous accountant called Rob McLeod, currently the CEO of Ernst & Young in Australia, no doubt a contributor to the other side of the house, but that will soon be redressed. But sir, I looked at that Hobsonville development and I send a signal to my relations up here, guard jealously the first rights of refusal. Because the goodwill evinced through this minister and a variety of other politicians does not necessarily go forward to the next generation of politicians. And in the future, you'll have to look at the first rights of refusal and establish, is this a kosher example of the Crown still needing use of such property and such resources? We can all agree in that part of Tāmaki Makaurau, when it was used for the military, it was beyond cavil. But, sir, when it moves into a kind of housing development, and I'm not being partisan, sir, because we initiated it on our side of the house, but when I look at those developments, I've no doubt in my mind, very few people from that part of the Kaipara, from Ōtakanini and other such, and Haranui and other such places, are going to find a home on land that was originally Crown land and has since been dedicated to serve a Crown housing purpose. But that's more of an issue that belongs in social policy rather than to signal to the visitors here today, guard jealously the first rights of refusal and ensure that the Crown, when it makes a call, that it is to not only your interests, but no one is exploiting it to your disadvantage. Now, sir, it may actually has the capacity to sort of sully the day that we raise commercial matters of this nature when there's a great deal of symbolism and history to be commemorated in this part of the Bill's journey. But at the end of the day, all our fine rhetoric has to turn into an economic reality. And there is a good opportunity here in the forestry asset. It's also valuable real estate that over time will grow in value, and it may come to pass that pine trees are not the best thing to do with the Woodhill forest. But the value is, it'll be your decision, subject to the various nooks and crannies of the contract that lies upon that land. And the Kaipara Harbour does need a great deal of remedial action, and the fact that there are statutory acknowledgements and a willingness to take on the cultural leadership only bodes well for the future management and stewardship of the Kaipara. Because in days gone by, that was the huarahi, that was the waterway. So kia manawa nui, kia manawa roa, kia kaha koutou, kia koutou, ka hoki ngā whakaaro ki tō koutou matua, nā mātou I karanga ko Happy Dynamite, engari ko Happy Pihema, nāna mātou I mau ki Ōtakanini, mātou I ahu mai I roto I muri whenua, ka haere ki kona ki te mātaki-taki I ngā mahi whakatere kumara, whakatupu kau, whakatupu kararehe, ko pau ka tō rātou, engari enei kaupapa I nā enei e amohi anei koutou. Hona tā mātou ngā kanohi Māori, ahako ko tau, ahako ko pita, ko mātou he tautoko I a koutou. Me tā mātou ki te tūpono he raruraru, karawhiua mai ki a mātou, pēnei oti a mātou te tahi rongoa, kia korera wātu e nā momo raruraru e māturuturu tonu ki roto I a tātou tamariki mokopuna. Nā reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Nikki Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Kia ora, tēnā tātou te whare. It's a privilege